May I have your attention for a very important public service announcement? We are taking over the internet, and the United States champion of word wrestling entertainment has returned for another edition of the Pocket Locker Podcast. God damn, that belt is sexy. I am your host with the most, all the way from the East Coast, and as always, good people, I am in airplane mode. Gang, it's so good to see you all. Welcome back. Welcome back. We have some shit to get into today. It has been quite a while since we last checked in with one Salvatore Cardova. Last we checked with Sal, oh my goodness, y'all, we've had so many good memories, child. Do y'all remember incompleteness theorem? Do y'all remember incompleteness theorem? No mention of incompleteness theorem. No mention of somebody got to find that clip. We gotta find that classic Sal clip. But those that know, Sal is the creationist. He was the intellectual force, the mentor behind Bread of Life's Rebekah Davis. But then, unsurprising to all of us, a shock that none of us saw coming, Sal decided to quit Rebekah Davis. He left. He was like, sister, I cannot work with you any longer because Rebekah Davis is LGBTQ accepting. That's right. That's right. Say what you want to say about Rebekah Davis, but Rebekah Davis stand 10 toes down, okay, on LGBTQ issues, okay? She is an accepting Christian. And Sal, y'all don't understand. They broke up. It was live on air. We got to watch the whole thing. It was so sad and miserable. But Sal's about that life. Sal, one of them Christians, like, I'm sorry, we can't be friends over this. It really actually is a tragic story. But anyway, let's get to what we're here for today. Sal's back at it on his Evidence and Reasons channel, and he says he is talking to a biology professor who was a trained evolutionary biologist but is now a Christian creationist. God damn it, gang. You know I'm not going to stand for that shit. You know I am not buying this fucking narrative of you were a trained evolutionary biologist and now you're a creationist. Now y'all know I'm already calling bullshit on that. But we got to get into it because this is the type of shit that's really problematic. This is the type of shit that's very manipulative, okay, and it's very much an issue because they're making this shit so they can have these Christians hear this shit, and then they can all walk away thinking they've done figured out the problems with evolution now. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's take off on this. Let's see what's going on. Y'all already know I'm hanging out and gather. I'm in the where am I at and gather? I'm in the drawing room chilling, okay? So people hanging out in the captain's room. Link in the description if y'all want to come link up with the gang and gather. All right, let's get our view right here. Boom. Yep, that's it. There we go. It's gonna look a little weird, y'all, because Sal got the little thin band thing going on. Here we go.
Greetings, welcome to the Evidence and Reasons for the Christian Faith video channel. I am privileged to have Carissa with me. She has been formerly a professor in a variety of topics in the biological sciences, and she's also a Christian. And I'll let her describe her journey in the Christian faith. I think it'll be inspirational to many of you in the audience. And that's, we'll just take it from there. So Carissa, tell us a little bit about yourself and your work and your studies and your fields of interests.
Yes, please do.
So I was very passionate about biology, and I studied sea slugs at the California Academy of Sciences. And from there, I started becoming very interested in dinosaur tissue, and started learning more about just how well preserved.
Sorry, y'all. I'm gonna be
dinosaur
all types of petty. I'm trying to get the
DNA
the commands going real quick. Hang on, sure. Where'd you go? Where'd you go? We got to know about this.
So I was very sea slugs about biology, and I studied sea slugs at the California Academy of Sciences. And from there,
California
I started
Academy of Sciences.
becoming very interested in dinosaur tissue, and started learning more about just how well preserved dinosaur cells were, and that DNA had been successfully stained in a variety of dinosaur species. And they were actually derived from the actual fossils themselves. So I'm also very interested in, I'm an educator, so I am a professor of biology, but I also have had the opportunity to teach organic chemistry 1 and 2. I've taught the lectures and the labs, and I taught genetics. And I also taught biology 1 and 2 to undergraduate students. And
okay, y'all. Okay, y'all. We're off to the races. This is all very, very interesting. Y'all, I'm multitasking. Ah! Shout out to Dank Slug and Kata. Did you see them? Did you see them? Did they come? Did you? Are we just sending them love? Yeah, we miss Kata out here, and Twiggy. Where's the gang? We miss the fam. I'm gonna try to reach out to Kata too on Discord. Actually, this is really interesting. I don't think she gave us a second institution, right?
There, I started becoming very interested in dinosaur tissue, and started learning more about just how well preserved dinosaur cells were, and that DNA had been successfully stained in a variety of dinosaur species. Okay. And they were actually derived from the actual fossils themselves.
Derived from the fossils. Okay.
I'm also very interested in, I'm an educator, so I am a professor of biology, but I also have the opportunity to teach organic chemistry 1 and 2. I've taught the lectures and the labs, and I taught genetics, and I also taught biology 1 and 2 to undergraduate students. And I have been very successful in obtaining research grants from the National Science Foundation and also the National Institute of Health. So the National Science Foundation was specifically for biodiversity research as it related to sea slug diversity. And then with the National Institute of Health, I was looking at marine natural products and drug discovery in the Philippines under the international cooperative.
Okay, this is all very interesting because we gotta get into the twist. We gotta get into the twist, y'all, because here's the thing. Like, a lot of these people, I'm all about the nuance around here when it comes to this shit, y'all. A lot of these people, they have solid credentials when it comes to biology. These mole type creationists, okay? But usually there's a lack of expertise when it comes to evolution. And she gonna try to sell us as she's trained evolutionary biologist. But from what I'm hearing, it doesn't sound like the focus of her training or her teaching was necessarily evolution. Now, normally that doesn't mean we're gonna denigrate your understanding of the topic or anything like that. But if you're coming out with your creationist and now you're gonna be out here with them telling us, you know, evolution doesn't work, now all of a sudden that becomes much more relevant. It's also just sad anytime somebody on this tip is an educator. But this is I know I don't know who this person is, right? Carissa or whatever. This is the first time we've encountered this person. So from a perspective of who's out there on YouTube, who's the famous creationist or whatever, this isn't the William Lane Craig. This isn't a name like that. But to me, this is the type of person with that mix of just enough credibility, and in a position as an educator or affiliated with institution or academic life where they're really dangerous because they really do have what it takes to get people to kind of go along with them and buy into their expertise. And then they're sitting on some bullshit. So that's that.
Biodiversity group. I love teaching.
Carissa,
I love
that's her name.
sharing the natural world with my students. And I
It is a
really
bit all
like
over the place, of course.
educating them about just how wonderful the details of science are and how that testifies to a creator making all of nature. And I want them to be in awe of their creator, and I want them to have a deeper relationship with their creator. So
now see, that's not appropriate. That's wild. You know, first off, to just, you know, you're just way, and this is this thing that a lot of these creationists are doing now, where they're actually they're coming up with their own personal definition or understanding of what science is or what science should be or what science should encompass. And they do that literally explicit because they'll claim that, you know, they're of the belief that it should include, you know, elements of other elements of philosophy or theology or what have you. But again, science is about natural explanations of natural phenomena. So it would be totally inappropriate to it would be totally inappropriate to infer that we can get at like evidence of creation. Like we can be confident about you're literally not allowed to teach that. Like you know what I'm saying? Like but then to like use that to say that you're essentially evangelized, right? To say that your students, because it's one thing to say I'm a believer, like you know, I don't, you're sure, okay, like cool, like you know, lots of people are willing to share their faith or lack of faith or whatever. I don't necessarily take issue with that, but the idea that you like are going to tell your students that they should and you're going to do so on the basis of what you're teaching them in a science class, that's insane.
I want them to love science, but then also love their creator, and their creator is
it's killing me.
About your bio.
It's killing me.
Said you also
my
taught
ears.
biology.
Okay, so I did do some tutoring in cell biology. So in terms of tutoring, I have tutored AP biology and
I bet she's on OnlyFans. I would not have predicted that, but I'm here for that comment.
Environmental science. I've done some science writing
good laugh out of me.
At the graduate level. So I've helped graduate students with their thesis writing. I also tutored some biology Olympiad candidates, which is a biology competition where students have to answer biology questions that can be as advanced as the graduate level, but typically those students would be at the high school level. And so it's a competition, so I help tutor students in that. I have done some research mentoring with a few students as well. One was helping a student dissect scientific literature related to cancer. It was specifically basal cell carcinoma. So I helped her dissect the literature so she could be prepared for her science research camp. That was a summer program.
Okay, I'm gonna just be straight up with y'all. Like, this is a bit weird too. Like, when you get to these like mold types, these pseudosciences, there's a lot of stuff that comes up that's weird, right? Who talks like that? Who talks like that? I've literally never heard. Gang, I'm being honest with you. I only ever, not once in my life, heard of somebody describe it as dissecting the literature. When she said that, it just raised a red flag. Like, what are you talking about? Who talks like that? And you could imagine that being something like a lay person, but I've never heard of something dissect the literature like that. It just, I know it seems trivial, y'all, but I'm telling you, it's something weird about talking like that.
I also was successful in getting a National Science Foundation grant with one of my students to study sea slug diversity along the California coast. And that was, again, that was a research assistantship for high school students grant. So there are grants for high school students who want to do research, and the NSF does offer those, and the NIH does as well. So you don't even have to be an undergrad in order to do research. You can be in high school.
So I wanted to ask now, for the audience benefit, Carissa and I had a conversation backstage, but I'm going to put her on the spot. She is a Christian and she's a creationist. Can you tell the audience how you got to that point? And many of the people that watch this channel are students of science that are dealing with issues of faith. Can you also say anything that would encourage them to give your testimony?
This is where a lot of this stuff becomes problematic. And y'all know me. I just really think that we're coming to a head with just the way we deal with religion, and because this is as a for real evolutionary biologist and a for real like educator, like not in fantasy land and on earth one, as they say. This is problematic. This is indoctrination, and we got to do something about people feeling like their religious expression entitles them to fraud, right? Because that's what we're saying, right? That's the argument here. We literally are talking about creationism versus evolutionary biology. You're representing yourself as a credentialed scientist and literally saying the exact opposite of what we have evidence for. And again, we have, like, again, it's the most well-supported theory in the history of biology. So the evidence is overwhelming. And again, the shit's been adjudicated in court. So at what point are you just a snake oil salesman or salesperson? This is just really just trash.
Yeah, so the complexity of DNA and cells made me realize there has to be an engineer, designer, and creator of life. So I started asking questions in my undergraduate studies in biology, which was at Temple University, about origins. And this happened because the boy that I was in a relationship with hated God, loved evolution, and unfortunately later died of a drug overdose after we broke up. What's so fascinating about the story is that I would have never changed majors from voice performance into a biology major unless I had met my boyfriend, because he was passionate about the natural world. He loved nature. He liked hiking. He just liked watching nature documentaries with me. So in a sense, he rekindled my passion for the natural world. However, he was looking at everything from an evolutionary worldview.
All right, and now here's another thing, and she's done this a bunch of times already. It's the gaslighting. They don't love nature. They don't love the natural world. I like to say these people love science like they love gay people, right? I love you. I'm just literally the person responsible for antagonizing you. It's just literally that that I'm with the people that are actually trying to tear you down. But I love you. They don't love nature. And they keep doing this gaslight because they're just in this Christo-fascist worldview where they get to say, I have this supernatural obsession with God. I have to make everything about God. I have to see God in everything. I have to pervert science to even say that that's about God. But then I'm going to pretend I love the natural world. No, again, natural and your God ain't got shit to do with each other. Your God is the definition of supernatural. So you don't love the natural world. The natural world doesn't mean anything to you. You find the natural world and our understanding of it literally unacceptable, unpalatable, depressing. And you have a need to cling on to the supernatural and to see the supernatural in everything. So stop. I would not at all. This is what I mean about calling these people out. I would not let a person like this sit up in my face and pretend they love nature. Stop. You look, be as religious as you want to be, but you're not going to gaslight the rest of us. We're gonna separate the wheat from the chaff when you fucking talk to some of us. Okay, we're not gonna let you just have your fucking cake and eat it too.
Now, the reason he hated God was because his father had an alcohol problem and passed away due to alcoholism, and he was very angry about that.
Pocket change is the channel currency you get for watching it, and then you can gift it, you can bet it, you can gamble it, and then there is a store for redeeming the redeeming the pocket change, redeeming the currency. So just like a streamer thing, you have like perks and stuff. I think for us, mostly the things in our store are sound effects you can play on the stream. Yeah.
And
Good
also his
question.
mother
Sorry, I
passed
should
away
explain
from a
that more
car accident.
regularly.
So he was angry at God. But I know it was anger towards God because I saw some of his.
And then also I give out pocket change usually to the first 3 people that are here on my streams, like on these streams on the Pocket Locker podcast. I don't usually give them away on the hot program stream.
Musical lyrics that he wrote, and they were very dark and sinister. And at that point, I knew something had taken him over. And at that point, I knew evil existed. So he was an atheist, and he was very angry at God. I did see him
What? This
plummet
is
into
so
a dark.
weird.
Passed away from a car accident. So he was angry at God. But I know it was anger towards God because I saw some of his musical lyrics that he wrote, and they were very dark and sinister. And at that point, I knew something had taken him over. And at that point, I knew evil existed.
And
So he
again,
wasn't.
gang, does that sound like the way a scientist reasons about the world? I knew something had taken them over at that point. Oh, and I knew evil existed. Like, this is very weird. Very
He was
weird.
very angry at God. I did see him plummet into
Again,
a dark
angry
pit
at
of
something he didn't
despair,
believe in.
and
True, very
immediately knew
true.
it was spiritual warfare. Like I wasn't even a
His
Christian at that
lyrics,
point, but I just
exactly.
could sense that something was controlling him, that was outside of his physical body. So I did clean out his junkie den bedroom after his death, and that was very traumatizing, because I saw drugs and alcohol and cigarettes, and it was an eye-opener for me. And he also had musical lyrics, and he was cursing God, and he was angry. And so I saw that, and he always justified his belief in no God because of Darwinian evolution. So I think God used this. I think he used it to make me who I am now, which is essentially I was a trained evolutionary biologist, but now I believe in a creator. And I actually always did believe in a creator. I believe in an intelligent designer, at least.
All right, this is very weird. Okay, and all right, let's remember, y'all. We're at 8:48. We're at 8:48, and we're gonna come back to that. Let's.
So I started learning more biology, and I started
From there. So Carissa, tell us a little bit about yourself and
Okay, I
your
know
work and your
I sound
studies and
crazy
your
right now.
fields of
Just fuck with
interests.
me. Fuck with me. I promise you this is going somewhere.
So I was very passionate about biology, and I studied sea slugs at the California Academy of Sciences.
All right, y'all. Remember this so far. We have the California Academy of Sciences. Okay? Let's keep going.
And from there, I started becoming very interested in dinosaur tissue, and started learning more about just how well preserved dinosaur cells were, and that DNA had been successfully stained in a variety of dinosaur species, and they were actually derived from the actual fossils themselves. So I'm also very interested in, I'm an educator, so I am a professor of biology, but I also have had the opportunity to teach organic chemistry 1 and 2.
All right, notice the jump, right? Notice the jump. We've gone from the California Academy of Sciences to, oh, I'm also an educator. I teach. I've got the opportunity to teach organic chemistry. I've gotten the opportunity to do this. I've gotten the opportunity to mentor people doing research. Okay.
I've taught the lectures and the labs, and I taught genetics, and I also taught biology 1 and 2 to undergraduate students. And I
Taught
have
biology
been very
2, 1 and
successful
2 to
in
undergraduate
obtaining
students.
research grants from the National Science Foundation and also the National Institute of Health.
Been on research grants.
So the National Science Foundation was specifically for biodiversity research as it related to sea slug diversity. And then with the National Institute of Health, I was looking at marine natural products and drug discovery in the Philippines under the International Cooperative Biodiversity Group. I love teaching. I love sharing the natural world with my students. And I really like educating them about just how wonderful the details of
right
science.
And so then we go into details and all this stuff and all this, right? So there's a big gap there, because now when you're at 8:48, when we go back to where we were,
is essentially I was a trained evolutionary biologist.
and now you want to tell me you're a trained evolutionary biologist. I need more deets. Y'all see what I'm saying? Do y'all see what I'm saying? Because the California Institute, let me show y'all. The California Institute of Science, Academy of Science is a museum. We're an aquarium, planetarium, rainforest, and natural history museum in the heart of San Francisco's Golden Gate Park, and a powerful voice for biodiversity research and exploration, environmental education, and sustainability across the globe. You understand what I'm saying? Now, if you're okay, but now you're going to tell me you were trained as an evolutionary biologist. Cool. I'm not even saying I don't believe you, but look, when you're on this creationist tip, now we got to pull cards. We got to pull cards. I need to know what is your actual education, okay? What does it have to do with evolutionary biologists? Because notice a lot of these people, it's biology, but it isn't evolutionary biology. And if you think you're gonna come in and just upset the apple cart in the whole fucking field of evolution, you need to have some real expertise in evolution, not just come from some other field in biology. It's nuanced like that. I hope y'all see that. That they're biologists, but they're not actually really usually evolutionary biologists. And where the fuck are you teaching at? Where the fuck are you teaching at that's allowing you to proselytize in your biology classroom and talk about how what we see in the natural world based on science is evolution, is indicative of a creator? which is the exact anti-science message that every single red-blooded evolutionary biologist and biology department is fighting against. We don't believe you. You need more people. Sorry, I just had to put it in hip-hop parlance, y'all, because that's where we're at right now.
But now I believe in a creator. And I actually always did believe in a creator. I believed in an intelligent designer, at least.
I always did believe in a creator. I believed in an intelligent designer, at least. Does this sound like a goddamn evolutionary biologist to anybody in here? This is the antithesis of evolutionary biology. This is literally just like I not even understanding what the theory of evolution is about. You've always...
It was, I was testing the waters. You know, I went to graduate school and
all right, here we go.
I wish he told us. To determine organismal relationships. And I concluded these tools could be useful for determining relationships and speciation within organismal families, but using phylogenetic systematics to determine evolutionary relationships across all life forms, which was much more, it was much less reliable. So no one knows what ancestral organisms represent the nodes in phylogenetic trees. So those nodes in a phylogenetic tree are just hypothetical ancestral organisms, but
no one knows what they're right. This is nonsense. What are you talking about? You went to grad school and you realized that phylogenetic trees were nonsense. They were based on hypothetical organisms. It's not even true. Like at least not in any meaningful. Yes, there are sometimes they're indicative of organisms and specimens that we don't have, but a lot of times they're based on comparative anatomy. We build phylogenetic trees out of comparative anatomy all the time. That's what they did before they had DNA. Those were never based on hypothetical organisms. You know, they're based on what people actually found. And even so, it doesn't matter. It's an inference. Like this is just crazy. This is just literally not understanding the basics. And so again, what did you go to grad school for? Where did you go to grad school? These things matter now. We can't just let creationists enter the conversation and say, I went to grad school, I teach biology. Okay, now let me tell you that actually the science points to a creator. Because it fucking doesn't. And these people are moles, and this bothers me. Like, and y'all somewhere, I know I'm yelling at y'all, apologies. But somewhere inside of me, I'm yelling at my field. I'm yelling at other evolutionary biologists. I'm so frustrated that this is happening, that we like allow this shit to happen, and that we're not all fucking outraged, that we're not all like attacking these people. Because this is so antithetical to our work. And I just think that so often we're like, I know I hate to sound like a fucking dumbass right winger, but we're in our smug little fucking ivory towers doing our little research and teaching and shit, and we think that like we've defeated the fucking creationist movement because the evidence is on our side. Meanwhile, they're trying to fucking infiltrate the fucking field with these mole ass people, you know, and like it's just their existence bothers me.
Nobody really knows what those ancestral organisms are.
Also, cheers. I need a drink. I need a goddamn drink. Y'all know Sal Cardova is not good for my health.
So evolutionary biologists create trees which are very hypothetical and not factual. So if you insert more data, you can get a very different evolutionary tree. So
if you insert different data, you can get a different evolutionary tree. Yes, that's how science works. What is wrong with this person? What is wrong with just let
the end, which tree is correct? I mean, which evolutionary history is correct of those organisms? So in grad school, the students pursuing the experimental sciences would criticize the evolutionary biologists because their research was less concrete and tangible. And so that was really interesting to see that take place in secular university. Kind of the experimental sciences kind of duking it out, with the evolutionary biologist would be more like a historical type of science.
We're getting clues. Okay, we're hearing secular university. Okay. Y'all know me. Which one? and I know it's personal, and you know, you don't have to put your resume out there on video like every time you do something. But again, if you had a real conversation with actually another professional in the field and you start saying some crazy shit like this, oh, trust me, these are questions that need to be asked. And y'all know me, I tell you all the time, I started bachelor's and my master's in biological anthropology, boom, Penn State University. Did my PhD, Michigan State University. Most of y'all know I'm currently a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Minnesota. I could say those things because those things are true, and nobody affiliated with me is going to say that anything I'm saying about evolution is so far off that like I have to like keep it clandestine. Like I don't even want people to know where I went to school. And people, just think about most people who are not sitting on some bullshit, they tell you where they went to school. They're happy to mention their school, show their school some love. I'm just saying, like, there's a lot of questions about these people, and the transparency isn't there. That's what I'm really trying to say, y'all. It's about the transparency. I need more goddamn transparency
in the past and not the present. So my testimony of accepting Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior began in 2011.
He really do, PC.
After I became extremely ill with a digestive bacterial infection known as Clostridium difficile. I was in the midst of pursuing my graduate degree in marine biology at San Francisco State University.
There we go.
It was a scary and stressful time.
The scary shit, y'all. I actually interviewed for a job there. All right, San Francisco State University. Whew. Rest in peace, y'all. Not a good look for that institution. But look, nah, it's cool. You know what? It's like but it's at least we're hearing about the school. That's a legit school.
Obviously, because I was trying to do well in grad school, but I was falling apart physically. I visited Calvary San Francisco during my illness, and the love, compassion, humility, and testimonies of those that I met there changed my life forever.
I went to church and it changed my life. And here I met some of my
dearest Christian friends, whom I am still in touch with. Let's see here. So today, the local church has influenced me to be the light in the scientific and educational communities about God's creation and proclaim the scripture. And the scripture section.
Shit, y'all. I forgot to change tabs. So y'all can see what's going on. I know y'all can hear it, but let me switch tabs. All right, here we go. Sorry about that.
Ever since the creation of the world, his eternal power and divine nature, invisible though they are, have been understood and seen through the things he has made. So they are without excuse. So all scientists, you're without excuse. That's for all of us to read that. All of mankind. I have been rejected and persecuted by my colleagues in higher academia for my courage and stance on origins, but have persevered because Jesus has given me the strength to do so.
Pause the tape. I have been rejected by my colleagues in academia. They always telling on themselves like this because it's beautiful. It's part of their persecution narrative. But that tells you a lot. That's something that we should never overlook with these people. For some odd reason, they can never get their colleagues on board with their bullshit. For some reason, it's like when they go, you know, the students, they really been stressed out about their exams lately, but you know, I got my TAs helping me, and I think we're gonna pull it off. You know, we got to get them grades in on time. It's in your contract, right? Oh yeah, by the way, you know, they've been writing some really interesting papers lately about how, you know, the evidence that we see in biology too really points to the creator. Ninja, what'd you say? Like, wait, skirt, right? Like, it stopped the bus, stopped the meeting. Like, you can't, I'm saying, y'all, for real, you cannot talk like this amongst real scientists. you cannot say these things. You can't just say some shit like this at a meeting. So I know they try to make it work for their narrative, but just be very clear about what it is. This is pseudoscience. And there's a reason your actual scientific colleagues reject your pseudoscientific bullshit, and let that never be overlooked. Why is that? I thought y'all had the truth on your side.
So,
and also, is that your story? Is that your story? You were a trained evolutionary biologist, but now you're a creationist. And how you became a Christian, rather than because you actually found positive scientific evidence to support intelligent design, is, oh, you went to a church and the love you felt from the people changed your life. We've never heard that one before. That's a fucking revolutionary explanation. That's definitely worth thinking that evolution is in serious, serious trouble. I mean, God, how can the theory stand up to people who go to church and feel the love of the community?
I almost could cut the interview off right there, because that's going to be such a blessing, and I may just edit and repackage it just to give Carissa's testimony. That's just really powerful.
Okay. You want to
He
stop
gonna
there?
give it the chop and
that
screw
changed the
treatment.
subject. Because you mentioned you were a voice student. I also knew you were a dancing student, a dance student. Or
Oh boy.
tell me a little. Okay, I'm gonna guess. I'm gonna lay this out. And I could be.
Yo,
totally
this is
wrong.
how Sal flirts.
I don't think you're a soprano.
I was. I'm not so
Oh my
sure anymore.
goodness.
I think I'm a second soprano,
Okay.
and because I was in choir at Clark Summit, and I was having a hard time with the upper higher
Sorry,
notes.
for those of you that I didn't warn ahead of time, I apologize. Sal literally thinks he's some kind of smooth Christian lover boy. It's very gross. Yes, there's gonna be a lot of cringe. Consider this your cringe warning.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think that if I got back into voice training, I probably would become soprano, like first soprano again. But I would say I'm more of probably a second soprano at this point.
Yeah, I characterize your voice. Maybe I would almost guess you'd be a lyric or dramatic soprano.
Sal, we are not fucking having choir
Oh yeah, they're all
auditions right
shades
now.
for the opera singers. I just
Can we get back on
talking voice.
listen. Can we just look? We gotta fast forward through this or something. Y'all know I have a certain amount. I only have a certain Sal threshold. After too much Sal, my head will actually explode.
So that's kind of.
And I hear that's against terms of service.
I like some opera, not a lot of it. I select arias.
Oh
I
my
like classical music. I don't like opera.
Oh my goodness.
So classical piano, I love.
Oh my Lord.
From Japan. That was my background. So I was just curious because it's.
And y'all see me. I'm cheers, gang. Y'all already knew. Y'all already knew. I was like, I'm gonna need another drink.
And like singing. So you also did dance.
Why do I do this to myself?
We watched a lot of baseball and ballet and football and figure skating.
Oh.
That was definitely my mother. She loved all of that. So it's really funny that when Dad and I would watch certain things.
Holy shit! He's still going.
When I watched movies with Mom, it'd be love stories. But I enjoyed both. But Mom did like. Oh, she loved football. She loved baseball. But I've always had a fascination with figure skating. And then side would be ballet, more so figure skating, especially pairs figure skating. I did like watching Swan.
Those of you that watch Hot Program know my one black friend is the only person I let just tell me long-winded, side rambling, random stories during a show. And Sal Cardova is my one black friend, not by a long shot.
Ballet was my favorite ballet, by the way.
Did you ever see Shen Yun, which is the Chinese classical ballet?
I saw advertisements for it.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome too.
So you like that? I actually didn't.
Oh yeah.
I did. Yeah. So I like the classical ballet very much. So tell me a little bit about your dance interest.
Well, I danced for 12 years, from the age of 6 to 18. And I started out doing classical ballet.
Can y'all get a room?
Later in my life, I started taking modern dance classes.
Go get coffee after church.
I don't know. With prima ballerina. So that's why I started ballet, to improve.
I'm sorry,
thought about this, so I don't remember the last name.
Okay, so the reason I asked.
I was learning ballet from the best. You're right about that, but it's, again, we compartmentalize everything in academia, and we're not, I think a lot of people think in a compartmentalized way, but it is engineering. It's engineering far superior than anything that we have ever created. biology is. So it is engineering, but it's far more sophisticated than anything a human can make and engineer. So yeah.
Well, for me,
All right, so
I always think
are
it's
they back on biology now?
when I hang out with my Navy SEAL friend here on the channel, we talk about military stuff because I was a defense contractor. But this other side of me, I don't have a chance to talk much about. So
I think you have a diverse interest. It makes you very interesting.
Oh, well, thank you.
So, is she buying the charm? Is she buying the charm? Do not give Sal positive feedback. Yo, you know what this reminds me of? Like when you're at a conference or something and some fucking sleazeball is like trying to hit on your friend, and then unfortunately they hit on, and you're just like, you're trying to like shake this fucking loser, but they happen to hit on like the one person who don't go out a lot or isn't used to fucking getting hit on. And so they're trying to like politely like just deal with the situation and make small talk. And you're sitting there fucking like, you don't give them fucking positive feedback. Don't compliment them. Oh my God, we'll never get rid of this fucking asshole at this rate. No, don't tell him you like his voice. Oh my God. Like that's what this is like. Just the watching the worst.
I had to leave the arts. It was hard to make a living in it. And I ended up studying engineering and math, and that, ironically, I think led to my path in studying biology, because I think the engineering, basically,
right now we're back to biology.
It's the better way to conceptualize biology.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, that's a new way for me to actually think about it, because there was an individual, I'm not going to mention their name, but they said, engineering and biology are very, very similar, and I was like, you're right about that, but it's,
okay.
Again.
All right, let's talk about the levels of stupidity here. First off, y'all, could you just imagine trying to just imagine show up at a conference of biologists and just being like, you know what? Yeah, I've been doing a lot of reading about engineering, and I think actually maybe engineering is the like, it just sounds such a weirdo. But what's ironic about this, because of course they're going off their, intelligent design, creationist nonsense idea, but this was literally Darwin's argument for natural selection. They're like recreating the argument for us. Like his thing was, he realized that the same way farmers used selection to select for certain traits and manipulate the stock of their plants or their livestock, the environment could do the same thing. So it's just it's very weird that a lot of times when they get down to really trying to explain how this intelligent design works or what this creative process looks like, of course, it looks like selection and it looks the same as the Darwinian mechanisms. But of course, it's God somehow engineering it all of a sudden. And just that term engineering is supposed to make us go, oh, you're right. It does look like engineering. Well, who does engineering? Designers do engineering. It's so desperate.
And we compartmentalize everything in academia, and we're not, I think a lot of people think in a compartmentalized way, but it is engineering. It's engineering far superior than anything that we have ever created. Biology is. So it is engineering, but it's far more sophisticated than anything a human can make and engineer. So, yeah.
Well, for me, when I entered the creation evolution controversy about 40 years ago, giving away my age,
about 40 years ago,
they're always dismissing. It's like, why are engineers weighing into the creation evolution controversy? They're not biologists. This has changed.
Could you imagine? Could you imagine being a loser for this long? Just being wrong about something. Just being wrong about something for 40 years.
Definitely changed. There's an article that I cite frequently. 1/3 of the engineers at MIT delve into biological problems because they have the skill set. So the biologists will come to them and say, hey, look, can you help me figure this out? one of my professors in cellular neuroscience, PhD in electrical engineering, had 0 biology training. They hired him on the spot. He had the right skill set to work with understanding how the ear works, because audio, I mean, if you look at audio engineers, a lot of engineering, there's a huge amount of engineering just figuring out how to make microphones and speakers, and then filtering the signals to make it sound good. That's all the mathematical, the huge cottage industry of building mathematics.
But again, this is dumb. Yes, there's intersectionality. First off, a lot of times people get hired just for whatever reason, right? They need a professor, they need an instructor, but these type of collaborations across disciplines, they're fun, right? In this regard, biologists hire mathematicians and statisticians, and sometimes hire artists, and we sometimes hire sociologists, and we sometimes hire psychologists, and sometimes you work with economists. Who cares?
Understand sound and describe it mathematically, then reconstruct it. Plays right into understanding how the ear works. And so they hired him on the spot, and this is becoming more common. So the research teams that are trying to understand the operation of biology, they're packed with biochemists, computational biologists, engineers, physicists. They don't have a lot of use for people that can just do phylogenies, because that doesn't help you figure out how the cell really works. And there's
that's
yeah,
why
they're
what I was
really
saying
mad
earlier
about
is that's very
phylogenies.
shallow. It's a very shallow technique for trying to understand evolution. Like it's not a very convincing method, really. Phylogenetic systematics it's because it's so hypothetical, and we all acknowledge that. You know, we all say this is a hypothesis. Our tree is our result and our hypothesis. It's both, which is like, you know, it's our result and our hypothesis. It's both, and we acknowledge that as.
Are you? What type of silliness is? Yes, you have a tree that you start with. That's your hypothesis, and you're testing it. See, here's the problem. What we would say to a person like this, with all due respect, is you don't understand phylogenetics. And that's fine. You're not a phylogeneticist, as far as we can tell. But don't sit up here and act like this is just so weird. It's so weird to act like a concept that you clearly can't accurately represent is somehow an indication that the entire field of evolution is a fucking farce.
You know, biodiversity, taxonomy, you know, molecular phylogenetics, systematists, whatever you want to say. Like, we all acknowledge that. I think a lot of us, honestly, are using it as
not yet, but I can imagine a case
and like publish papers about it. I mean, I'm really honest about it. Like, this is how you can get tons of publications out. This is how you can identify multiple new species, which it is an effective strategy for identifying new species. But is it effective at understanding true evolutionary relationships? I would have to say I'm not convinced of that.
Well, I'll give you an example, and this is actually an argument even within the creationist community. Like, are dinosaurs birds? I mean, it's, you know, where I fit on that, and we're going to get to dinosaurs because that's the one thing I was really interested in. I just will delight that. In the meantime, I'll talk about a little bit about what they call phylogenetics. And I confronted a creationist. I said, okay, so if you're going to say birds or dinosaurs, are you going to, you know, if you extend that and you're going to import all this evolutionary phylogenetics into creationism, are you going to say then we're Sarcopterygian fish? And it's worse than that. Are you going to say a bird is a Sarcopterygian fish? I said, anatomically, that just doesn't make sense, you know. And I've dabbled in it, and I think you're going to find some horror stories if you're going to insist that birds, amphibians, giraffes are Sarcopterygian fish. I said, this is just not going to work. Axel Meyer, an evolutionary biologist, said we're all Sarcopterygian fish. I said, no, the architecture is different. You could say,
again,
I said,
now
okay, even common ancestry.
Again, he's conflating common ancestry with monophyly, right? He's conflating the idea of sharing common ancestry with certain groups with the idea that nevertheless, no matter how much splitting you do within a particular taxa or group, you stay within that group. So if you start a primate or a human, like, all your descendants are going to be humans or whatever. Like, again, it's it gets to be exhausting having to go over these things, but it is worth pointing out just how much they don't understand the basics.
You can't say we're fish. I mean, this is where you're talking
No
about
one's
taxonomy.
ever said we're.
Taxonomists have had a
Do
little bit
you
of battle
know?
with-
Like, you can't say we're fish. Like, if somebody said this at a meeting, like, my first instinct would be to choke them out of sheer frustration. My second instinct would be to just leave. And I'd probably go with my second instinct. And I tell a story about like how I ended a lab meeting getting a biological anthropologist and cultural anthropologist into a argument over what does culture mean. But that's what I'm getting at. There's sometimes somebody says something so ridiculous that it's literally understandable that you just leave. That you just like Uncle Bobby says, like, you're not even wrong. Like, you're not even wrong because like the thing you said was so nonsensical that it's like not even having the right conversation. And so like you don't have to address it, you don't have to talk about it, you don't have to like file a fucking report, we don't have to sit here and have a discussion. Somebody just says something so fucking dumb that you just go, you know what, I'm not even today. And you just dip. That's it. We're done. We're leaving. We're going to fucking lunch. This guy. Actually, I lied. We're going to get a drink. Mode. Go. I need some weed. You're in a meeting. They're like, hey, y'all, we wanted to reach out to the other side, and the Creationists said they got some new stuff, so we invited Sal Cardova and Carissa here today to talk to us. And then Sal says that shit, and you just go, I'm going to get high. I don't even care what y'all think of me. I'm just telling you straight up. I'm done. I'm going to get high. Bye. That's just how it goes.
And say, look, this is not how you categorize things. And I've seen that. And then at the molecular level, I began to see, I never had a chance to pursue this more because I think they're more interesting. I mean, they're more urgent, not interesting. A lot of things are interesting, but some things are more urgent. I said, okay, so you ought to see a huge sequence divergence between lungfish and coelacanths because they look very much like the archetypal Sarcopterygian. And I said, a testable prediction is you're going to see wide divergence in the molecular sequences if evolution happened. Otherwise, if you're going to insist for Sarcopterygian fish, you're going to see something that doesn't agree. I happened to find a Smithsonian article that said, and you'll understand this since you understand phylogenetics. It said there's a mysterious problem with the sequences of of lungfish and coelacanths. It seems like the evolutionary clock slowed down. And that's exactly what I was thinking. If your hypothesis is wrong, you're going to see stuff like that. I said, I give up. You guys try to fix it, but you're still on the wrong path. Even an amateur like me could see this doesn't make sense. And what I was trying to say is our sequences should be very close, among the so-called tetrapods, and they're not. And you're seeing is that the coelacanth and the lungfish are too close in similarity. I said that, we ought to be kind of in between that if we descended from something like that. I'm sorry, that's really technical, but I just had to tell you guys, because I get some evolutionists that watch this, they swear by this. I said, look, even an amateur, I could tell the sequences don't make sense. And
all right, that's another thing. Like, again, like it's going to sound very nitpicky, but even in the description, he refers to her as a creationist biology professor, quote unquote, Carissa. So I guess she's using an alias. Again, y'all, the lack of transparency describes her journey from being an evolutionist / evolutionary marine biologist and then becoming a Christian creationist. That hits me weird. Because, again, I always say the term is evolutionary biologist. The field has a name. The practitioners in it have a name. So I would not let somebody refer to me as an evolutionist. And evolutionary marine biologist, that's very interesting. But it almost seems like you're being careful about calling yourself a straight up evolutionary biologist, which she kind of did in the video. And I kind of thought that, like, maybe Sal wrote the description, so I can't really say too much, but there's just a lot of this. So I just want to show y'all this. There is a lot of things that we just pick up on with just the way these people talk, that just makes it very clear that they're not legit.
Would be a good creationist project for one of you grad students if you wanted to pursue, like you said, you study the evolution of phylogenetics because you're interested in the particular creature. I think.
Well,
And it does matter, right? Because we know that this is a term that the creationists use. And so I may be being a bit hyperbolic, but only slightly, to say that to refer to an actual evolutionary biologist as an evolutionist is in a sense a slur, kind of like you're taking this term parlance in a derogatory fashion, and then you're using that to describe somebody who that's like their legitimate profession. So it's not like calling me the N-word or something like that, right? But it's a similar type of derogatory expression that somebody who's legit would not want used about them.
Very fascinated with dinosaur DNA because I think, woolly mammoth DNA has been successfully sequenced, mitochondrial and nuclear.
Wow.
And dinosaur DNA, it might be, a long shot, I don't know, to get nuclear. It might be a long shot to get nuclear, but if you can get a really fresh permafrost-derived fossil that has well-preserved cells on it, bone cells and cartilage cells, and you are able to successfully stain the nuclei and see the DNA in the nucleus and the staining of the DNA, the next step would obviously be, to try to sequence it. So another option would be to look at mitochondrial DNA as well. You could try to stain the mitochondria of a dinosaur cell and see if they're in there. And if they are in there, then maybe there's mitochondria inside maybe there's mitochondrial DNA inside the mitochondria. And so then you could maybe sequence the mitochondrial DNA because there's more copies of it and it's a much shorter sequence. So if we could do that, we could really know for sure, like, just how similar it is genetically to birds. And I would hypothesize that I don't think they're going to be like birds at all. And this idea that birds are descendants of dinosaurs is purely based on anatomy. But once you have the genetic evidence that it's going to tell a completely different story. So I think they're a completely different organismal group altogether that has many different diverse kinds within it, and then you would have speciation within those kinds. But you wouldn't obviously have speciation occurring over long periods of time and forming birds from dinosaurs. Okay.
Yo, flat Earth, right? Like this is literally what I'm thinking. This is my exact thoughts when she said that was like when she started down that. As soon as she started down that particular path, flat Earth. You want to tell me you were trained as an evolutionary biologist, but you want to relitigate our birds, dinosaurs? Really? Like, really? Flat Earth, like literally, like, do you understand what I'm saying? Like from a biology perspective, like that's the equivalent of being a flat earther. Like you were just trying to revisit something that is like they're trying to make it like these are still open questions, these are still hotly contested debates. Wow, just insane. The other thing that's so obvious with people like her and people like Sal is that they do not understand the fact of evolution. This is something that even the Catholic Church has acknowledged. To be honest, the Catholic Church, I don't think the Catholic Church is pro-science, right? I think the Catholic Church is a church and a cult and extremely problematic. But they have at least acknowledged not just that, evolution is a well-supported scientific theory, but that it's a fact, that it actually is what happened. And it's really important because evolution is the only viable scientific explanation we have. And to be honest with you, it always will be. Because of the fact that it's so well supported, it's supported enough to the point of literally being a solved problem. And that's the fact of evolution. Yes, the theory of evolution leads us to lots of things in the field of evolutionary biology because we're still filling out the details of how evolution works, which was like really apparent even early on when she started talking about how students from the experimental STEM fields, they really had a hard time with phylogenies, and they challenged the evolutionary biologist. First off, you're supposed to be some sort of modern trained evolutionary biologist, and you know nothing of experimental evolution, right? This is a person who's acting like they've never heard of the Lenski long-term evolution experiment. A lot of y'all in the fucking audience have heard of the Lenski long-term evolution experiment, and you don't cosplay as evolutionary biologist. She never heard of experimental evolution. She's not even aware that you can evolve things in a lab. Also, with respect to the natural history, yes, it's a historical discipline. Everybody that understands it understands that it's a historical discipline. You're trying to explain what happened in the past, and that makes it different in some sense than the questions you might have in a chemistry lab or something like that. That's an opportunity to teach those students about how science works, not to come out later and be like, yeah, when I bring in like chemistry students into a biology lab, they don't understand how this goes either. Like, it's just so weird.
So that's Darwinian evolution at work. But the more that we sequence more DNA, the more we understand how sophisticated and complex genomes are, the less and less likely that these phylogenetic trees are really telling us much of anything. In fact, they might be helping us distinguish different species. They might be useful for understanding diversification within families. But another problem with some of the science that's being done right now is that they're just piecemealing different genes and creating trees out of the genes themselves, like maybe 5 or 6 or 7 genes, sometimes just 3 genes, and they create an evolutionary story from that. Well, that's not very informative, because at the end of the day, you're only taking a small segment of the genome and using that to establish relationships amongst organisms. Good science would require all phylogenetic trees be based solely on entire genomes and not just small genome fragments.
Oh my fucking God. Again, just tell me you don't understand science without telling me you don't understand science. First off, that's one of the beautiful things about genetics is you really don't need complete genome sequences to understand phylogenetic relationships. And we've done a lot of work without them. But of course, now that we have whole genome sequencing, which is getting more affordable, but isn't a trivial expense by any means. Like it's a totally unrealistic expectation to think that we would need to have whole genome sequences to understanding evolutionary relationships, and 2, that would be something we could even reasonably expect to have. Both are wildly misguided. And again, it's just like not understanding the basic nature of science. And you see this with pseudoscientists. You guys see this a lot of times where you hear apologists talk about a double-blind study. Like you'll be like, here's all this fucking research on whatever the fuck, and they'd be like, well, I would believe it if I could see a properly controlled right. All that isn't some form of an apologist shifting the fucking goalpost. And at the same time throwing science under the bus, literally acting like particular types of experiments or particular types of data are the only thing that can be dispositive of a particular issue. And it's just a lot of bullshit, but it's easy to call out. Like I would, it's just very easy to be like, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. But I hate the fact that these people turn around and say they love nature and they love science. And I can see why this person's scientific and academic colleagues have rejected them, because they're a crank, and they're putting forth pseudoscientific garbage. And I can see why they're disgraced. it's just very unfortunate that so many Christians rely on these people. And that's something I think should be stated on some level. I actually kind of empathize with these type of morons because they're taking what's at stake seriously. They understand at some level that if we have a natural explanation for how here, it means we no longer need a supernatural one. And they take that seriously. And in some sense, I respect that because they're at least not being the Christians that just ignore it and don't think seriously about it. But yeah, this is, I guess what I'm getting at is part of what annoys me is that a lot of other believers look down on creationists when in reality, their belief, their faith does rely on these claims. They just haven't gotten into it to realize how fucked they are. But these people are exercising a particularly pernicious variety of cognitive dissonance because they're jumping into the fray and having to do the logical pretzels just to maintain their Christian identity.
Sorry, I had to cut on the air conditioner. It's kind of warm inside the laundry room here. Since we talked about dinosaurs, and since I'm going to advertise the entire talk about your dinosaur detective work, this is a good segue since we're talking about phylogenetics and stuff. Tell me first the role that hearing about dinosaur DNA, how did that affect your Christian, your personal walk? What role did that play in your conversion to Christianity? And then we can go into the
mic
specifics.
drop, Crystal. This is so good.
Kind of a grant proposal that you prepared. If you'd like to talk about it, I'd be delighted to hear about it. And you can actually educate me. I'm really embarrassed to say I'm not. I know kind of biology from the theoretical aspects and textbooks. I've never done any laboratory stuff. And so when you talked about staining and stuff, that is so foreign to me. So if you could first talk about what dinosaur DNA, how that affected your walk with God.
Well, I would say it's like I said, my boyfriend and watching him self-destruct, I would call it, because of his atheistic views and his hatred of God and his justification of that due to Darwinian evolution. That obviously made a huge emotional and spiritual impact on my life.
Y'all, like, again, this is just malicious, weaponized ignorance here. First off, this plea, like, oh, it was really about watching my boyfriend's life be destroyed. But again, if she were sincere in even engaging with her partner's non-belief, she wouldn't be doing this, right? She wouldn't be throwing him under the fucking bus. She would understand that obviously evolution probably wasn't what he cited as the reason for his non-belief. But even if he did, again, with all of her fucking training and shit, she knows better than to straw man somebody like that. But again, she's on Sal's channel, and this is supposed to be one of those, hey, this is like Christians talking to each other. So they get lazy. They let the mask slip, and they say what they really want to say.
My life. So moving forward from there, I just started asking deeper, more philosophical questions about origins. I started studying cell biology and cell structure and function in undergrad. And I started asking questions and saying, okay, there's no way that this could have formed itself. Like, there had to be some kind of intelligent mind that did this at the cellular level to create all of these organelles and these molecular machines and the DNA. So I would say I was an intelligent design individual. And that was before graduate school. Now, I was leaning intelligent design even when I did my internship at the American Museum of Natural History. So once I was and that was an undergrad. So once I got to graduate school at the California Academy of Sciences, and I'm sorry that I'm throwing that name out. It is what it is. Everybody knows me there. But
unfortunately, they're like, God damn, leave us out of this. I didn't really know
how God did it. I hadn't made like a decision about. I think theistic evolution was sort of always never an option. I don't know. I think it's because my dad told me why that was an issue for Christians to subscribe to that. And actually, Richard Dawkins himself doesn't think that being a theistic evolutionist makes any sense. So if he doesn't think it makes any sense, I don't think it makes any sense. And it's because of the conflict.
Again, like a lay person, yeah, they might cite Richard Dawkins in terms of, you know, what they've read or understood about evolution. An evolutionary biologist, never, almost never, 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 never.
With, you know, that death basically would have had to have come before the fall if you were a theistic evolutionist, but obviously that doesn't work with what scripture says because death came after the fall. So that's what the scripture says. It doesn't say it came before the fall. So if you believe in theistic evolutionists, you have to like play around with the certain scriptures. And so that's why Richard Dawkins
it is science or scripture.
And he actually would just say, well, I'm just a Darwinian.
So now she's a young Earth
creationist. Fit,
wow.
You know, creation and evolution together into theistic evolution. It didn't make sense to him. And I don't think it makes sense. It doesn't make sense to me. I think a lot of people choose that because they want to be accepted by the scientific community. They want to get grant money. They want to get funds. They want to be able to do prestigious research and publish. And so they make compromises. And so
no. That's the mole. Maybe the mole type reasoning is you got to get that money, so you got to pretend you accept evolution. I think for most of them, it's they understand that that's the state of the science, and then they want to be Christians, and so they just that's the natural conclusion is, yeah, I accept evolution, but God did it. These people have a similar pre-commitment, but theirs is to their idea is basically, if you're going to believe the Bible, if you're going to be a Christian, then you got to be a biblical literist. If you're going to really hold the Bible in proper authority, then it's young Earth creationism. So that's clearly where these people are at, and so it's just you know, obviously this is easy pickings, and I don't think many people in the audience here are, you know, at high risk of falling for this, but I definitely know a lot of the believers in my life would love to be comforted by some Christian creationist telling them that, don't worry, I studied evolutionary biology and I'm a biology teacher and I'm telling you that nature points to creation and nature speaks of our creator. And I encourage my students to appreciate and love their creator because that's the truth. Trust me when I tell you this is the type of bullshit that a lot of well-meaning Christians in our life will eat up because it tells them that they can say that they love science too, and still feel like good Christians. And people like me, and hopefully by me pointing this out, people like you have the unfortunate responsibility of pointing out that these people are lying to them. And that is a lot of where my blood boils. That is a lot of where my genuine anger at people like this comes from. Because I see what happens when students come into the classroom with false expectations about harmony between science and their faith. And I definitely see the false expectation with family and friends when creationists create this type of false expectation for them. And honestly, it feels unfair to me, right? It feels unfair to me that you put me in a situation to have uncomfortable conversations with people because I have to be honest where you're willing to lie for Jesus. And I can't do that ethically.
Subscribe to theistic evolution so they can be a Christian and also do evolutionary research. So I think it has more to do with career and livelihood and financial support and money than anything else. In terms of, once I was at the California Academy of Sciences, that's when I got saved. And that was because I got really sick with Clostridium difficile. So I wasn't a young Earth creationist at that point. I became a young Earth creationist when I started exploring dinosaur tissue, cells, and DNA. And I just could not fathom how well preserved dinosaur tissue was from fossils. In fact, Mary Schweitzer herself said,
this is one of the things I was going to talk about in my summation, but I'll mention it now because of Raw's comment. I find it sad that an old collection of religious texts overrides newer data that's been tested more than said religious text. That's another reason I just can't take any of these people seriously. Um, because to look at evolution and say, well, I'm critical of their conclusions from comparative anatomy, I'm critical of the genetic analysis, I'm critical of their phylogenetic trees, but I don't demand any. Oh, once I'm critical of that, I'm just going to accept what the Bible says, hook, line, and sinker. It's just blatantly hypocritical and blatantly obvious that you're not serious about science. And fine if you're a layperson and you say some shit like that, I'm gonna call it out because you're sitting on some bullshit. But if you're gonna present yourself as an academic professional and conduct yourself like that, oh, now I gotta cut you because nah, that shit's a whole different level because you're weaponized at that point, and other people are gonna use your credentials to go much further in the wrong direction than they would be just because some random Christian rejects evolution.
That she could smell like something foul on the fossil. So it was very fresh. I would say very fresh tissue, very fresh cells. And later, in 2020 and 2021, very recently, she was successful at
Good to
staining
see you,
DNA
Michael.
inside
Both Michaels,
bone cells and
technically.
cartilage cells, and demonstrating, that there was a decent amount of DNA still in the nuclei of some of these dinosaur cells. And she compared it to the cells of emus, ostriches, alligators, and the staining was very similar. Now, of course, the amount of DNA was much less in the dinosaur than it was in the emu or ostrich or alligator, which were fresh, very fresh new cells. But it was just profound just how fresh the tissue cell, like the cells looked under the microscope from the dinosaur. They look just as fresh as the cells from the emu, ostrich, or alligator. So it's almost like there was no time that had gone by at all between those two specimens. But the staining was still very pronounced. But again, it's just the amount. So she theorized that the amount was less because a lot of the DNA had been degraded, but there was still a significant amount there to see. So I did have an email conversation with her about mitochondrial DNA and looking at mitochondria in dinosaur cells. So I hope that she pursues that. I hope she goes after it because if I can't do it, I hope she does it.
What?
I hope that you can see
What?
mitochondria in dinosaur cells. I hope that you can sequence mitochondrial DNA so you can, tell us what it is. Like how similar is it to all life that we know today? All extant living organisms. How do the dinosaurs fit into, the diversity of life? Of course, as a young Earth creationist, I believe they're not going to be anything like the birds. But I do.
I hate to say this, but again, this is not even interesting. We already know where they fit. Like, this is just so, like, nobody cares. No, nobody's interested in this. This is not a real question. It's like they don't even have scientific questions. Again, you're literally trying to dredge up and pretend that we need to relitigate whether or not birds are dinosaurs, which is the equivalent intellectually of being a flat earther. And I mean that sincerely, y'all. These are people who, if we're being for real, they reject the notion that we're animals, right? They now reject the notion of common descent. That's what she's really saying. When she's saying, oh, you're not going to find that birds are descent, that's what she's trying to say. She's trying to argue against the common descent of birds and dinosaurs. Why? Because they want to undermine common descent overall. We don't have time for this shit. For real shit. I gotta make time for this shit because again, somebody in my fucking field's gotta make time to deal with these fucking creationists. But in terms of the real shit in the fucking public discourse, like we don't have time for these fucking people. These people just need to be let know, no, we see you, we know who you are, you're full of shit, your credentials are horse shit, nobody's fucking impressed, you're faking the funk, you're phony. The only question is, are you a mole or a fucking convert? Right? I don't know if you're a person who used to be fucking sincere, then you went to that goddamn church, you found the love of Jesus. But what were you even doing in that goddamn church? Right? This person said they were always believed they were created. They always believed they were a designer. So again, you were already a fucking Christian. So Sal wants to put this up as a trained evolutionary biologist who's now a Christian. Bitch was always a Christian. was always a fucking Christian. This is somebody who was always a Christian, and at best was a fucking mole. Somebody who went into biology because they knew from the gate that they were gonna just get training so they could fucking shit all over the field. Like that Taylor person. Y'all know what I'm talking about. That blonde. I don't know Taylor. I don't know her much more about her name than that. But she's a grad student, creationist. She was out here with Sal and Rebekah too. Y'all, some of y'all remember Taylor. But Taylor's a mole. Like, I think Taylor's somebody who literally went into grad school planning to become an apologist and use their credentials in a weaponized fashion. This person may just be a true believer who's stuck on stupid. But either way, you got to take a person like this a little bit more seriously, because they are going to use their credentials.
I do want to encourage that if you have the funding to do this, you should do it and not be afraid to do it. And who cares if you change the paradigm? Like, that's what we need. We need a paradigm shift. Darwinism is collapsing. It's falling apart. So I think we need a paradigm shift, and I think dinosaur DNA sequencing could help with that. So
yeah, I think so. Love.
And I feel bad if I put words in your mouth. Is it fair to say that began to incline you toward young Earth creationism?
Yes, because DNA has the propensity to break down very easily, especially when it's in these harsher environments where the temperature's changing, you have radiation, you have erosion, you have water.
What
all
does
of these
that
things
matter?
Like, how can it still be there if it's millions and millions of years old?
Oh,
and
my
I don't buy the iron hypothesis of the iron preserving the cells, because the experiment that they did was in a very controlled setting with a lot of blood. And they're saying that the iron had that ability to preserve the tissue, but that was from the blood. But the thing is, you're not going to find those conditions in a fossil. So whatever experiment you set up is nothing like what is actually going to happen inside that fossil.
Okay, so here's another thing. This is where we go back to the credentials. This person is not a serious evolutionary biologist. They've got some training, whatever credentials they got in biology, but they're not specifically in dealing with evolution. And one of the ways you can tell is because, first off, they talk about these periphery issues in a way that reveals they don't understand the issue. But more importantly than that, they act as though these are linchpin issues. They act as though, there are these particular phylogenetic trees, or there's this particular hypothesis we have about DNA. And if any of those particular hypotheses is, or the way we're teaching them now is proved not to be true, then we just got to get rid of evolution. And anybody who understands evolution is that that's not how it works. Again, that's why it's such a well-supported theory, is because it's got so many disparate lines of evidence that all support it, that you could get rid of many of them and we'd still have so much evidence using the other methods that it just wouldn't matter. That data is not essential. None of that data is essential. The way that they're making it out to be, there's no linchpin. Remember, we understood evolution before we even had DNA, so we don't need. There's no particular linchpin hypothesis related to DNA that you can say that, oh, we corrected some understanding DNA, all of a sudden we would get rid of evolution. This is crazy talk. It's literally just nonsensical. And so, yeah, this is just trash. Just an apologist.
So you may have made a point about iron radicals having the ability to preserve, but that's not, those conditions are not found in the actual fossil itself. So you can't take your experiment in the lab and extrapolate it onto the actual fossil environment that fossil was in for extended periods of time.
And I'll mention to the audience, I had a professional radio
not an authority at all. It's just wrong.
He obviously believes in an old Earth and the mainstream viewpoint. But I confronted him. I said, look, it doesn't agree with the chemical dates. You have peptide bonds that have lasted that shouldn't be there. You have racemization, you have oxidation, and now you mentioned the DNA. I said, you have all these chemical markers. And I said, a testable hypothesis is if you see kind of consistency across.
It's a really good point, Michael Bell.
Like the million-year-olds.
Again, I think because they think that it's more frail. Like if they really pin it to Darwin and they really demonize him. But yeah, you're very right. I think it's strategic. It's strategic so that they don't have to deal with how much the field has developed in they can misrepresent evolution as strictly being what they consider to be Darwinian mechanisms. But yeah, that's a really great point.
Very similar racemization profiles as the one higher. They said this should have been gone a long time.
But that's another great example too. Almost like the term evolutionist. Most evolutionary biologists would reject the term Darwinist. Some of us, like myself, would maybe accept the term Darwinophile. And that's really just more like there are people that are like into Darwin, like they're fans of Darwin in the sense that they're fans of his writing and they like to read him and like to, you know, trade stories about him or whatever. Like, you know, like Darwin's a very popular historical figure, obviously in the field. And there are other people who in the field who just think that's kind of corny, like, because like you said, the field has moved on so much since then that they're not into Darwin like that, and they kind of think people who are weird. I'm actually a Darwinophile. Rich Lenski, my graduate advisor, is someone who's really into Darwin. Like, we can get together and just talk about some obscure Darwin writing or conversation, because that's a worthwhile conversation to us. My current my current postdoctoral advisor, he thinks that's weird. And even though he came out of the same lab, like, he's literally just like not into Darwin like that, doesn't care. And that's probably how most evolutionary biologists are. So yeah, I know I kind of rambled there, but I wanted to give y'all a little bit of that, because you might be wondering, how do evolutionary biologists feel about Darwin? And it's kind of polarizing in that sense. But not in a negative way. It's just that some of us are really, and like Darwin's actually one of my favorite authors. Like, if I had time, I would just read more Darwin in my spare time. And I've taken like courses on like reading Darwin and his writings and stuff like that. But yeah, kind of weird.
Says, look, this is gone. It's the natural direction that your amino acids are no longer going to be 100% left-handed. And then now you mentioned the DNA. Under under just like typical conditions, DNA has a half-life of 521 years. Okay, so you can, with the Arrhenius equation, you can extrapolate that to cooler temperatures, but you're not going to get preservations of millions of years, much less hundreds of millions. And then I'm seeing that also with, the proteins, and then, any number of molecular markers. And the thing that's not really well known is James Tour was looking at this too. James Tour wouldn't describe himself as a young Earth creationist, but he said, I don't know what to do with that. He's a synthetic organic chemist, and he said, how do you maintain these peptide bonds for that long?
So I think that there's DNA in there, and it might be pretty messed up in terms of its structure, and it might not even be sequenced.
Captain S, they like to say evolutionist because saying that all biologists are wrong sounds silly, doesn't it? Yes, exactly.
But the fact that we have a remnant of it from the DAPI staining, and you can see it visually under a fluorescent microscope, is very compelling. And I think from what I remember, the amount of DNA was comparable in terms of I think it was like 3. I can't remember, but I can't remember the exact diameter, but it was very comparable to the amount of DNA that was seen in a woolly mammoth cell. And so that was interesting, that the amount of DNA was similar between a woolly mammoth cell and a dinosaur cell, because they're supposed to be so drastically separated in terms of time scales. But the amount you could see visually was very similar. So that suggested that, okay, if we could get it from woolly mammoths, maybe we can get it from dinosaurs. And the Chinese Academy of Sciences was supposed to explore this further, and I don't know why they stopped. The only thing I can think is that the evolutionary biologists or the theistic evolutionists are very concerned about the answer they're going to get from the DNA. And so they're scared. And so, I mean, I don't know what to say.
They're
if you're scared about getting the answer. You're a scientist. You should move forward. You've gone this far.
Again, gang, I'm gonna just keep it real with y'all. This is my fucking channel. I can say what I want. It pains me how much fucking sequencing scientists are doing. They won't shut up about their fucking sequencing. Almost every fucking major institution, and even a lot of the not major institutions, have some serious fucking sequencing facilities. And if they don't have serious sequencing facilities, they have serious sequencing machines. And if they don't have that, they got some serious ass funds to send samples out to get sequenced. It's like pretty much all they do. And they just won't shut up. They're making whole genome sequences, and then they're sequencing the whole proteomics, and now they're sequencing fucking whole fucking communities of cells and shit. It's just so, oh my God. Again, this is another walk out of the fucking room moment. Yeah, I don't think they want the sequences because I think they're afraid of what answers they get from we're done. We're leaving. I'm going to get high. It's literally like, no, I'm over. And I swear to God, when you bring Sal and this woman, it better be Friday. It better be Friday. It better be fucking Friday, because the shit they say is so crazy. I'm leaving the room to go get high, and I'm not coming back the rest of the week. I'm not coming back the rest of the week. So fuck around and put this shit on a Wednesday. You will not see me for like 4 or 5 whole days. I will catch y'all on fucking Monday, because I need days. I need days to recover from the stupidity that you have just exposed me to.
So just keep going and don't be afraid. And that's the whole thing. I believe science, we need to allow it to lead us where it leads us, and not let our preconceived paradigms stop us from asking certain questions in science. And then, we're just completely missing things because our paradigm is shaping the types of questions we're asking. Like, if we change our paradigm, we're going to ask different questions. And so scientists don't realize that they're being hijacked by, a box if they just decide to subscribe to that paradigm. That's it. That's the end of it. Like, So anything outside of that, it's over. I'm not going to even, I'll give you an example, the Shroud of Turin. I mean, that is the most highly studied artifact, and it's been studied by biologists, by physicists. It's been studied so well, and nobody can figure out how the image of the body of Christ is on this shroud. All the scientists are saying there's no way that this could be man-made. Okay, well,
first off, they're definitely not saying that. But again, the Shroud of Turin, y'all. Flat earthers. They just keep on insisting on the most routinely debunked nonsense. Y'all, when a Christian mentions the fucking Shroud of Turin, I want to jump off a bridge for them. That is how embarrassing it is. Like, literally, like, I want to fucking jump off a bridge to save myself from having to experience how cringe and embarrassing it must be to be them. Y'all lucky I don't have a fucking bridge around right now. but it's seriously, like, y'all know who the king of fucking the Shroud of Turin is around here. Y'all know Mr. Shroud of Turin is none other than Otangelo Grasso himself. So when I see Cameron Bertuzzi capturing Christianity, literally hawking bronze Shroud of Turin statues next to Frank Turek, I'm just like, yes, they're literally in the Otangelo Grasso family of ignoramuses. And that is the group that these two have just thrown themselves into. Like, okay, let's just keep it real, y'all. There's a way in which being a creationist who claims to be a scientist, you just lose all sorts of credibility. You just do. But there is a real way in which when you start talking about the Shroud of Turin, you somehow lose even more credibility than just being a creationist alone. Like, creationism is really bad, but if you're also Shroud of Turin stupid, we have an even more serious problem on our hands.
Well, I think science is telling us that Jesus left us evidence of his resurrection. And I think that's very typical of Jesus, because he performed miracles throughout the New Testament. So why wouldn't he leave a shroud for us? So I really think science is corroborating the scripture and word of God. It's been clouded by Darwinism. And so they can't see. They're blind. Like, they can only see what they want to see.
I've definitely seen that play out in the junk DNA debate. When I worked for John Sanford, he said, Sal, I want you to go into the NIH, talk to the researchers, go to the conferences, take the classes there, which I did. And he paid out of his pocket to send me to these conferences and to take these classes, and I got to study under some of the researchers working either on the ENCODE or ENCODE related projects. At this juncture, I would estimate that the ENCODE project has spent $1 billion doing research on the human genome, and they're not going to stop. They're just proliferating, and what's driving it is because I went to an ENCODE conference in 2015, and that's 9 years ago, and my jaw dropped. Researcher after researcher said, okay, I'm working on this heritable disease or this particular disease, diabetes being one of them, but then there were all these other medical issues, and they said it seemed correlated to non-coding DNA, even the junk DNA regions. And then I read that paper by Francis Collins, the head of the NIH and also the head of the Human Genome Project. He said about 90% of genome-associated diseases are in the junk region, in the non-coding regions. 90%. Mm-hmm. Now that doesn't mean it's functional, but you got to be saying like, whoa, time out. And that's what I saw. The medical researchers were saying, we're just doing our job. We're trying to cure these diseases. That's why we're studying this. And Dan Grauer, who's an evolutionary biologist, said, if ENCODE is, he said these guys are crooks, the ENCODE researchers, because the ENCODE researchers said, we think 80% has biological function. He was livid. And he spoke at a 2012, he was an important speaker at the meeting of the Molecular Biology and Evolution Society, or whatever it's called. And he just went on a tirade saying, it's all wrong. This is garbage. It's a waste of money. On his Tumblr account, he said, these are crooks, they're ignoramuses. And the head of the ENCODE project, or the founder, Ewan Bernie's the scientific equivalent of Saddam Hussein. I mean, the guy was just nuts. And I still think he's nuts.
Again, I love science, but I'm going to call the head of a scientific society the Saddam Hussein of science. People who love science don't talk like that. They just don't. They just don't. I'm sorry. Like they're not. You know who does talk like that? Religious zealots. Religious zealots talk like that. That's exactly who these people are. And again, gang, please remember this expression as best you can. Linchpin argument. There is no single thing that the theory of evolution depends upon. So when they're like, just literally look them in the face and be like, nobody cares. I know that sounds unscientific. I know that sounds like it can't literally be the right answer, but trust me, it is. Like, it's just that there's so much evidence and there's so many different types of evidence. It's just an accepted fact. So any particular thing you point to just means we have to change our understanding of that thing. I literally don't care if the human genome is 99.99999% hard fucking encoded gene shit that you can't mutate, not one iota, because if you do, the organism will combust, okay? Versus it's actually like 50-50, like half your genes are junk and half of them are functioning. Or if it's 99.99999% junk DNA and there's just like this tiny little bit of fucking encoded DNA, and that actually accounts for like all of the fucking functional variation we see in what genes do in people. Why would I say that? Because in neither case are we going to be like, oh, that means evolution isn't real. It doesn't matter. It would just literally mean we have a different understanding of maybe how our gene evolved and what's going on in our genome. And we just had to really like reevaluate our understanding of how much of our genome is coding regions. And then, yeah, we might have some interesting hypothesis as to why we evolved with this particular balance of coding and non-coding regions. Literally, who cares? Nobody cares. I'm a biologist and I'm telling you, nobody cares. Even as other evolutionary biologists, we'll be like, when people present that stuff at the conference, we're like, that's great. That's great. Oh, I have a question. Yeah. So you said you went to about 4 or 5 different countries when you were collecting these DNA. Can you tell me? Oh, that sounds like such a wonderful trip. That was lovely. Congratulations on your paper. That's just fantastic. Y'all ready to go to lunch? Can we go to right? We don't even, nobody cares. It's not gonna set the field if it's gonna be like cool study, bro. Cool study.
And so when you're talking about, yeah, there is cultural resistance to certain ideas. That was just like, it was on full display. These guys weren't creationists, they were just medical researchers. And you think it's
well, so I think that scientists never want to admit that they're being restricted by their own paradigms, but that is the reality of the situation. And so you are limiting yourself. Like if you, I don't know. I mean, and that's only because you want to be accepted. It's the social.
Okay. I'm gonna tell you another quick. We winding up, because I think because I might confirm is the transpositions on tonight. I think transpositions on tonight at 8. I wanna, I'm trying to show my love to my fam over there. This is another narrative you hear a lot from creationists that's kind of bullshit. And I'm gonna just tell you the reality because it's been kind of funny lately. I'm like in a little reading study group or whatever, and we're literally it's a group that's dedicated to how to work with other people, like how to do better with like meetings. It's how to do better with like working relationships because we realize scientists have zero training about like how to work with others and stuff like that. How is this related to what we're saying? It's kind of funny. The reality that we talk about in that is part of what actually makes someone an academic is the exact opposite of what they're talking about. Most people are drawn to academia at some level for the fucking intellectual autonomy. It is because literally nobody gets to tell you what to think. You make your own schedule. You decide what questions interest you. You decide what to work on. You decide what experiments you need to do. Yes, you have peer review. Yes, you have advisors. Yes, you have, a field and people you interact with. But this notion that people become academics because they're so desperate to be accepted is pretty much the opposite reason of why most people become academics. And part of that intellectual freedom is it's that I don't have to worry about going along with the consensus. If I have good data and it contradicts, for instance, what my advisor is saying, or my boss, or the field, or whatever, it's your fucking job to tell them. It's your job to produce the really good evidence and be like, no, you're wrong. Here's the evidence that you're wrong. And then you publish it and you're like, look, all these people have been wrong. Here's my data to show they've been wrong. And that's the most motivating thing you could do because that's how you get money. You don't get money when you say, oh yeah, we're going to do what everybody else has already done. And we're really desperate to be accepted. So we're hoping that we get the results that everybody else has already gotten. And then wouldn't that be great? Like, no, you literally propose like, yeah, a lot of people have been saying this for a really long time, but we think they're overlooking this, or they think this has been the most driving factor. We think this other thing has been the most driving factor. So give us a bunch of fucking money so we can go prove them wrong. That's like literally how most funding requests start. That's literally how most research papers are written. If your research paper is not telling us why somebody else was wrong, guess what? We already don't want to read it. So I'm just trying to tell y'all, because sometimes it's just easy to let their shit just go in one ear and out the other. It really needs to be highlighted just how everything they say just betrays that they really don't understand scientific thinking and academic motivation. Yes, she has some training. I guess she went to grad school, but a true scientist she did not become. I can tell you that.
It's the sociology and the psychology behind it. You want to be accepted by your peers.
Oh, thank you so much,
you're giving into peer
Dave.
pressure if you don't want to ask
Dave
certain
sent $10. Y'all know I forget I don't even remind people, but yeah, we're monetized now. You can send the super chats, get them, Jay. Dave, I appreciate that so much. Thank you, my mans. Really do. Thank you.
You know what I mean? Like you can only ask these types of questions. If you ask these ones, like you're outside you're outside the lines. It's like everybody's like, oh, we're not in a box. We're scientists. No, you're in a box. Like we're all in boxes. It's just whether you decide to go outside that box once in a while.
You literally live your whole life according to one book. Okay.
They're giving
Please
into
don't talk to me about boxes.
Societal norms are what control human behavior and human research.
Oh,
yeah, it's very powerful. And it took something as big as the medical industry to say, hey, look, we're trying to find cures for all these diseases, especially cancer. And we're just going to respect the data. And it's like, well, look, if some of this is originating from non-coding DNA that we call junk, we got to deal with it because we have relatives, we have friends that are suffering all these ailments, and they're finally really motivated to say, we're just going to treat the data like it is. And it's beautiful to see. So as far as young earth creationism, what will motivate us in terms of dealing with the data? And one thing that kind of really makes my heart sink, I hope you'll let me share a little from my field in kind of the physics end. The Earth's magnetic field has been known to be decaying. We've been taking careful measurements for the last 100, 150 years, and it's decaying. It's decayed like 10% in our measurement time. In my lifetime, it's probably decayed 3%. And it's following an exponential decay curve. And I was highlighting publicly like 1 or 2 years ago, hey, look at this Wikipedia entry on geomagnetism. And it said it's going to, at the rate it's decaying, it's going to be gone in 10,000 years. They have since edited that out, maybe because the creationists were highlighting that they said it's going to be gone in 10,000 years. I said, look, that's very sobering, because if the Earth's magnetic field is gone, we lose our protection from, all of the cosmic radiation that's going to rip apart our atmosphere, with the ozone layer being the first part. That will have drastic effects on climate change. And a lot of people are saying we're very concerned about the ozone layer, and it seems correlated with the decrease in the magnetic field. I'm like, yeah, you better worry about it. Jesus said, this world is passing away, but my words will not pass away. And I'm like, I think the end is a little bit more inevitable than we ever dreamed.
So is that supposed to correlate with?
Gang, y'all hear, of course, and this is why it's so important to pay attention to these people. It's literally ends in end time fantasizing.
How the Earth is supposed to get swallowed up by fire, because that, whenever I heard that, I'm like, is that like a giant solar flare? But the only way that could possibly happen is if the Earth's magnetic field was not working.
Okay, so let's just start with mainstream science. They all agree that the stars are going to burn out, and before all the stars burn out,
and now we get to hear his apocalyptic fantasy, which ironically is based on science.
The universe is going to die, and one Nobel Prize-winning scientist, Steven Weinberg, said, the more we study the universe, the more pointless it seems, because he was lamenting. He said, look, this is all going to go away. And I'm like, well, there was someone who kind of said that a long time ago.
It's amazing they love the science when they think it agrees with the Bible.
And it's like, well, okay, so we're all in agreement that it's going to go, but how soon will the universe be uninhabitable for humans? And the one thing we do know is 99.999%, etc., of the entire universe is uninhabitable. I mean, you need air. There's a lot of vacuum out there to begin with. You need it to be like above freezing temperature, and it's either too cold or too hot. We're right in that Goldilocks zone. Oh my, I made you yawn. I'm sorry. See, now that's what happened.
Yeah, it's getting late. So.
Okay. Yeah. We'll wrap up. Sal, wrap this up.
This was a pleasure, though, and you'll have to send me the edited version so I can see the final product.
Sure.
All right. Woof. Y'all, that's it. And so y'all know what time it. Y'all knew what time it was. You know when you saw Sal, it's about to be some bullshit. But yeah, I honestly think, to be honest, a weaponized person like her does way more damage in the real world than even most apologists do, because it's that friendly neighborhood kind of church lady, like very, just very pleasant person. And then they teach at your school. So you assume they have a lot of authority and that they speak for the scientific consensus. And then they're telling you, like, no, I'm trained in evolutionary biologist, and nature points to our creator and how much he loves us. It's very easy for people to just fall for that, because honestly, it's what they want to hear. So anytime you're telling people what they want to hear, they're already more likely to listen to you. And then if you tell them that you have the relevant expertise and experience to really be a discerning party, and especially, I hate to say it, if you're talking to naive Christians who, if you tell them you're Christian and whatever, I think there is a sort of naivete that goes along with the faithful overall. So, you already have sort of risk factors. Yeah. So I think in the real world, where people are not plugged into apologetics and stuff like that, but do go about their daily lives in a situation where they, just might be educated by somebody like that, they're definitely a problem. They're definitely a problem worth addressing. So look, thank y'all so much for tuning in. ID, in fact, doesn't make sense. ID is sitting on some bullshit. Sal Cardova, of course, is sitting on some bullshit. Evolutionary biologist, that's a creationist. I think not. More like creationist that was always a creationist and remains a creationist, who I'm just calling you right now, homegirl, that science is not legit. You are not legit. And so if that's the best y'all got, you need to do a whole hell of a lot better. Look, I order you by command of the Most High Apostle Pocket Locker 86 to head over to that Transpositions, show some love to Ember and Carly and Stephanie and Bree. Let them know Dr. J. Bundy sent you. Love y'all so much. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see y'all over at the Transpositions. There's a link in description if you want to come hang out and gather. We'll see you next time, gang. Thanks again for the comments and the super chats. Much love, Dave. Appreciate you, brother.